Welcome back to Silver Fox Films. Today, I am going to show you a 2016 sci-fi, romance drama film titled Passengers. The interstellar spaceship Avalon can be seen traveling through space, heading towards a colonized world named Homestead 2. Its entire quarters are empty. The ship is on autopilot. 258 crew members and 5,000 passengers are in hibernation. Suddenly, the ship passes through an asteroid belt, which is weakening its shields. Power is diverted to the main shield, but the ship is about to collide with a massive asteroid. Suddenly, the asteroid hits the ship, causing various malfunctions. The ship begins to repair itself, but one of the hibernation pods activates. The passenger who has woken up is Jim Preston, a mechanical engineer. His pod opens, and an automated system assists in his awakening. It informs him that he has spent 120 years in suspended animation, and the ship is now only 4 months away from Homestead 2. He is told that he can spend this time enjoying the ship's luxurious aspects. Jim receives his ID band, instructions about his cabin, and the primary activities before arrival on the planet. Excited and nervous to meet the other people on the ship, he gets ready, leaves his cabin, and goes to an automated class designed for the entire learning group. Jim looks a little anxious as the hologram explains Earth's situation, describing it as overpopulated, overpriced, and overrated. It tells him to hold his questions until the end of the lesson, but Jim keeps asking why he is the only one there. He realizes that the hologram cannot answer him, and he sets out to find the other people. He reaches the ship's main concourse. There is no one there either, but an automated informational desk offers assistance. Jim asks to speak to a real person, and the desk directs him to a steward, but when he sees that there is no one there either, he asks to speak to the captain. When he reaches the bridge, even though he doesn't have access to go inside, he can see that none of the main crew members are awake either. He realizes he has woken up way too early. He runs back to the concourse and sends a message to Earth, asking what he should do, because he doesn't know how to go back into hibernation. The communication system informs him that the overpriced call made to Earth will take approximately 55 years for a response to arrive. Jim completely breaks down. He wanders around and finds the ship's bar, where he sees another person. As he talks to the bartender, something about him seems strange. When the bartender goes to get him a drink, Jim realizes he's an android. His name is Arthur. Jim tries to get more information from him, but he can't even explain to the android how it's possible for him to be there ahead of time. Jim wakes up in his cabin the next day and goes to the cantina, where he soon realizes that most of the items on the menu are reserved for gold-class passengers only. He takes his plain coffee and tries to figure out how to fix his hibernation chamber. After gathering all the tools, he gets it into operating condition and lies down inside the pod. But nothing happens. Following this, he decides to use the tools he found to break into the crew's hibernation chambers. That doesn't work either. Minor malfunctions continue to occur on the ship. Jim repeatedly returns to the bar to drink, but mostly to talk to Arthur. The android gives him some advice, which convinces him to break into one of the gold class rooms and have some fun on the ship. Jim tries all the restaurants, games, and entertainment systems. But as time passes, he becomes increasingly miserable being alone there. One day, while drunk and wandering around the hibernation pods, he accidentally reaches an airlock where spacesuits for spacewalks are stored. Jim puts on a suit and enters the airlock, pulls a lever, and then presses the button to release the airlock door. As soon as he's outside the ship, he is mesmerized by the view. He is the only conscious human being experiencing that moment. Jim releases the magnets on his boots and begins to float in space, feeling completely broken. He goes back inside, takes off the suit, but then returns to the airlock without the suit. He pulls the lever, ready to end it all, but at the last moment he changes his mind, rushes back inside, and slips on a bottle. Jim wakes up and is instantly drawn to a woman in one of the pods, whose name is Aurora. He finds her files in the directory and listens to her passenger interview, becoming completely captivated by her. Later, he is seen sitting by her pod, still listening to her interviews. Back at the bar, he is reading some of her writing and talking to Arthur about it. He becomes obsessed with the irony of his situation, traveling to another planet for a better life, waking up too early and never reaching it, and finding his perfect woman, but she is beyond his reach. Jim can't stop thinking about her. and the idea of waking her up starts to form in his mind. He talks to the android about it, but Arthur doesn't understand the conundrum. If he wakes her up for his own benefit, he will trap her there with him, to die on the ship. Jim initially decides not to do it, but as time passes, he can't shake the thought. And then one day, he changes his mind. He goes to her pod and activates it. As she is waking up and going through the same process he did, Jim hides and returns to his room. A while later, he goes to the main concourse, hoping to find her. And there she is, just as confused as he was a year ago. Jim tells her that they are the only two awake and takes her to the observatory. Then he explains to her that he cannot reach the crew or the ship's main commands. Aurora becomes terribly distressed and wants to go back to her pod. When they get there, Jim explains that there is no special equipment on the ship that can help them return to hibernation, effectively telling her that they are stuck there. They go back to the concourse, and he tells her that she should rest as she has just come out of hibernation. She feels sorry for Jim, who has had to spend over a year alone on the ship. Jim goes back to the bar, feeling regret for what he has done. He tells Arthur not to tell Aurora that he was the one who woke her up. The next day, Aurora wakes up. She goes back to the concourse and asks the automated info desk about the hibernation pods. Jim joins her there, and they go to have breakfast. As they leave, the info desk experiences another malfunction. In the canteen, Aurora realizes that Jim has been eating the same breakfast for over a year, and she orders one of the gold-class menus for him. They talk about the possibility of fixing the pods, but unlike Jim, Aurora is not ready to give up. She searches the infirmary, then looks at research documents, and eventually reaches the crew's hibernation quarters and tries to break down the door. Jim notices even more malfunctions occurring on the ship. Sometime later, Aurora is miserable about her life on the Avalon. She writes, wanders around the ship, and swims in the pool, becoming increasingly aware of her situation. She goes to the canteen to interview Jim, thinking his story might be interesting. She asks why he immigrated to the colony. Jim initially repeats company slogans, but then explains that he hopes to become someone in the new world, to build his life. Later, they are in the observatory, and Aurora finally reveals her reason for being there. Unlike the rest of the ship's passengers, she has a round-trip ticket. Her idea was to go to Homestead 2, stay there for a year, and return to Earth, becoming the first journalist to do so, and write the greatest story ever. Aurora gradually stops trying to find a way to fix their current predicament, and Jim finds ways to cheer her up. He takes her dancing, to the cinema, and to the basketball court. Eventually, he takes her to the bar to meet Arthur. She relaxes for a while until she remembers their situation. Jim is left alone with the android, feeling terrible about what he did to Aurora. The next moment, he is seen tinkering with something, and on the other side, Aurora enters the observatory and sees that Jim has built a miniature of the Chrysler building for her. Sometime later, they go on a date at the bar. They have dinner and share stories about their lives. She tells him that her father died when she was a teenager. After dinner, Jim takes Aurora to the airlock and they put on spacesuits. They go out for a spacewalk together. Finally, Jim has someone with whom he can share this magnificent experience. Jim switches off the magnets on their boots and they float together in space. They go back inside and immediately kiss, go to her cabin, and sleep together. Soon, they start living like a couple. Aurora moves into his cabin and writes about her life on the ship. They jog together, eat together, and sleep together. Jim explores the ship further and finds the hydroponics bay. He brings flowers for Aurora. One day, the ship passes by a red giant star, and they go to the observatory to see it. It's Aurora's birthday, so later that night they celebrate at one of the ship's many restaurants and then go to the bar. Jim goes to the washroom to prepare the ring he made for Aurora, while she is chatting with Arthur at the bar. Unaware that Jim wanted to keep it a secret, the android tells Aurora that Jim woke her up intentionally. Suddenly, Jim returns, and she confronts him with absolute disbelief. She runs off in anger and distress. Jim returns to his cabin to find all of his belongings gone. The next day, he meets her in the canteen, but as soon as he says something, she runs away. Aurora is very desperate. One night, she goes to Jim's cabin, punching and kicking him, wanting to kill him, talking to her over the comms because she's avoiding him. Jim tries to apologize and explain his actions. He tells her that he has fallen in love with her, but Aurora doesn't care. She cannot forgive him for taking her life away. One night, while Jim is in his cabin, another malfunction occurs. The ship faces a critical error and the main command shuts down. Later, he gets into an elevator and it malfunctions. Aurora goes to the main concourse and sees that Jim has planted a tree there. Then, she goes to the canteen, where the food dispensary is also malfunctioning. Suddenly, they both hear the deck chief's voice over the comms, asking who planted the tree. They both rush to the concourse and see Gus Mancuso standing in front of Jim's tree. He introduces himself and they explain the situation to the chief. He can't understand how 3 pods could have failed. Mancuso takes them to the bridge, and he realizes that something is wrong with the ship, but the system's information will have to be checked manually. As they leave the bridge, a robot almost falls on their heads, and they both tell Mancuso that the malfunctions on the ship are now happening more frequently. He says that shouldn't be the case and shows them how to collect data. Mancuso is checking the pods when Jim joins him. He has figured out what happened to Aurora's pod. The deck chief finds what Jim did to be horrifying. Later, he is on the bridge checking the collected data when Aurora joins him. They talk about what happened to her pod, but he tells her that there is nothing he can do about it. Jim comes in with the 16th broken robot. Mancuso starts feeling hibernation sickness, so he goes to rest, but as he steps out, he coughs up blood. That night, Aurora can't sleep, so she goes for a swim. Suddenly, the gravity fails throughout the ship, and she starts drowning as the pool water floats into the air with her. The gravity drive resets, and she barely survives. The 2 of them bump into each other while looking for Mancuso. The 3 of them are back on the bridge, slowly discovering what is happening to the ship. Mancuso figures out that something happened 2 years ago that damaged a major system. They have to find and fix the cause of the failure, because the entire ship is trying to compensate for its absence. If they don't fix it, the entire vessel will be stranded. They go to find the problem, but Mancuso collapses, so Jim and Aurora take him to the infirmary. He is dying, and there is no treatment that can stop it or prolong his remaining time. A while later, the 3 of them meet in the observatory, and Mancuso gives Jim his ID bracelet, tells them to fix the ship, and dies immediately. Suddenly, the lights turn a dangerous red, and the ship starts shaking violently. Jim tells Aurora that he needs her help, and they rush towards engineering, but there is another failure in the gravity drive. And immediately, another failure occurs, which also affects Arthur. Jim deactivates him. They finally reach engineering and start looking for the problem. They find it in the power plant, and as they open the hatch, Aurora is pulled inside. The asteroid had caused a breach in the hull in that area. Jim is also pulled in, but he manages to grab onto the hatch, which is closing on him. Eventually, he is also pulled inside, but they quickly manage to seal the breach. Immediately after fixing that problem, Jim realizes that there is more than one breach in the hull. They both follow the meteor's trajectory and find that it hit the reactor control computer. Jim thinks he can find replacement parts for it. They find the part and replace it, but the process to vent the reactor still fails. They try to do it manually, but it fails again. Jim figures out that he will have to open the vent door from outside the ship so that they can cool down the reactor. They both go to the airlock, and as he's getting ready to go outside, he gives Aurora Mancuso's bracelet because he might not come back. She helps him put on the suit, and as he enters the airlock, she tells him to come back because she can't stay on the ship without him. Aurora goes back to the reactor, where the temperature has reached critical levels. A bolt shoots out of the reactor and hits her arm, just as Jim reaches the vent outside and sees the door. The temperature in the reactor room continues to rise as he tries to bypass the vent door and open it. He soon realizes that he will have to manually hold the door open for the reactor to vent, and he tells this to Aurora. She doesn't like the plan, but he proceeds and tells her to vent the reactor. She doesn't want Jim to die, and they argue, but he tells her that they have to save the others, and she vents the reactor. The process is successful, but the fumes released from the reactor push Jim away, and his tether breaks. The pressure in his suit is also decreasing. He tells Aurora what happened, and she rushes to get another suit and bring him inside as quickly as possible. He apologizes to her again. She puts on a suit and flies out to get him, but her tether is too short. She is pulled back, but suddenly grabs his tether and manages to pull him inside. Aurora drags Jim to the infirmary, but it turns out he is dead. She uses Mancuso's bracelet to override the medical protocols and resuscitate him. The medical pod automatically works and revives Jim. Aurora forgives him. Now they have 88 years to fix the ship. Sometime later, the ship reaches Homestead 2. The hibernation pods open, and the crew and passengers awaken. In the colony built on the planet, people disembark and begin their new lives. On the ship, in a cabin, Aurora wakes up and sees Jim sleeping beside her. She gets up and walks out of the cabin. She wanders through the concourse and sees the tree that Jim planted, which has now grown large, with many other plants growing around it. She touches it and smiles. So, that was the story of Passengers. A tale of survival, difficult choices, and finding love in the most unexpected of circumstances. What did you think of the movie? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching Silver Fox Films. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more movie recaps and analyses. Until next time.